Welcome to February 3rd, a weekly masterclass Zoom session. And my previous video was all about containment, about having these hourly sessions really just to provide a bit of an update and more like speaking my thoughts aloud in a place that also contains it. So the containment factor, right? Where I have a recording that not only can I refer to, but when you record something, it's like a moment in time that like encapsulates whatever arises. So when I start like these sessions, for me, I don't necessarily have a plan or a script for it. Maybe there's a few ideas and I'm like, okay, I'll probably go in this direction, or these are some of the thoughts on my mind right now. And so I have like a loose outline per se, but a lot of times actually, if you watched a lot of my videos, I tend to go off on tangents or I go on to, a new idea pops up. I have more of a popcorn style kind of brain where it's not very methodical, it's not very linear, it's more like popcorn style and lots of like nonlinear ideas coming through. And so a lot of times I allow that to occur because, at the fundamentally, I believe that I trust that whatever needs to come out comes out. Whatever needs to be said for whatever reason gets said. And that will happen within this container. So this hour-long free flow or just speaking, whatever comes to mind. And today is Tuesday, and I usually do a Tuesday and Wednesday containment. Well, I'd be calling it master classes. But I think that's just because it's like it's just such a standard thing that people call their thing called a master class. I never really resonated with that, so I was calling mine like a master class just for lack of really putting much else thought into it and just using like the normal word. But for me, I really like the word containment because that's what it is for me. It's almost like these are all like I'm always talking or thinking or just like writing or, just different ideas. But there's not really a time when I actually just contain it all, whether creating an audio clip or turning on the camera and pressing record or let alone actually uploading something, right? So this is unique in the sense that, yes, sure, in a way it's a masterclass. And in a way, it's also simply for the containment factor because there's a different energy when you actually do something that you give a certain structure to, where you're like, I'm deciding I'm doing this, maybe not at a certain time. I mean, right now, I just finally turned on the camera and starting to record this after last week. I had kind of MIA, been a bit MIA. Like I filmed for my podcast, just like my episodes, but I hadn't done my weekly masterclass. And only that, like I started off doing a Tuesday, Travel Tuesday, and a Full Wealth Wednesday. And then that somehow got combined into just like a 1 day a week session. And then last week I totally didn't do the session. And then also I got a notification from my Zoom that my recording was already reaching its storage limit because I hold most of my recordings on the cloud or on my desktop. And I don't necessarily have a lot of organization in place or a process where I'm like offloading it, or I have like a system where, every week I go and do this. And that's to be said with like a lot of files and management and digital stuff. So I don't know if I seem like an organized person, which in a way I am, like, and obviously I've been to like university and stuff. And I don't know, I feel like I've I just need to kind of get a system in place, especially as like a business, starting like the Serefair Conservatory, there really needs to be a certain like underpinning, like structure in place, like systems, right? So that things become more routine in a way, like so that things that are more admin become, second nature, where you don't really think about it, where you don't really have to um where things don't feel so up in the air. Like there has to be a certain grounded structure that allows you to hold you in a way, like it has to hold the business and it has to hold you so that you're not just like feeling like, oh gosh, I have so many things to do. I think overwhelm is such a common thing or feeling that not even feeling, but like a description that people can feel if there's certain structures and systems not in place. So that's like a big one. Organization. And having certain logistics where, it's like the automation, it's the delegation, it's the SOPs, right? Standard operating procedures. If you ever wanted to hand off certain things to other people, be like, okay, this is the way that this gets managed. And then it's like a very clear process and outline that they can just simply go and enact. And I mean, that is one thing that I actually want. I want like a team member or like a VA that can help me with certain things, even if, help me to film certain things, help me to just have someone to bounce ideas off of, like regarding the Serefair Conservatory. And this is probably like another video that I could do more in depth, but it's that idea that it's like I don't just want a VA, right? I want someone who actually feels invested in the Serefair Conservatory. I want someone who actually is excited to build something or feels that nudge or that pull and being like, wow, this is what I want to do. I want to build the Serefair Conservatory. And it's like as it grows, obviously they will be compensated well as well for it, right? But it's like at the beginning, you have to have more of that, like, yeah, I kind of just want to help it grow as much as I can. And, so be in it more for the heart rather than just like, okay, I'm just doing a job. So they would really have to prioritize this role. And that's what I'm really looking for. I'm looking for someone beyond just like someone who's just going to go and do the tasks or whatever, which, there's not necessarily defined right now. And yeah, okay, so that's another tangent and another whole of another video. And that's really where these weekly updates, which, I'm thinking I actually want to go back to doing 2 a week, but at the same time, it's like I mean, 1 hour. This is where, when you're trying to like building a business and a company, it's like your time has to become a lot more fast, like fast in the way that, a 1 hour meeting, so-called, even just with myself here to contain my ideas and might get some notes out, is, there has to be a certain, can't just be, yeah, there's a lot of, not even brainstorming, but like a certain like brain dumping here, right? Because there's a lot of more just like processing ideas in my mind and like getting it out and putting it onto this platform here. But there also has to be certain like, okay, do I really have to do 2 videos a week for whatever reason? I mean, I really kind of at the beginning of this, I was like Travel Tuesday and Whole Wealth Wednesday, and that made sense to me, and actually it still does. And quite frankly, like I do have the time for it. I could because one could be more like exploration and like more things that are coming through. Like Travel Tuesday really is like, I mean, even like I love that the container itself is so malleable. So like I started off being like, okay, I'm talking about like my travels and all that. And then the second part of it, the Wednesday, was to do like how this then expanded my wealth identity and whatnot. But then at some point it was like, okay, well, there's only so much I can talk about my past experiences, right? Yes, there's still a lot of wisdom to be like mined and excavated and expounded upon. But there's also like now currently the current moment, like the present, right? Where there's also new stuff coming in. There's new journey and a new adventure. And there's also, so, maybe like, so some of these actually feels more exciting to me to talk about more so than like the past or talking about things that I've already done and things that, at the time were very, very relevant and like hot and juicy for me. And they're like, wow, this is like so exciting. This is like the new frontier for me personally, right? Going on the worldwide adventures and like that whole discovery in the decade of being that wanderer as Serefair. Now embarking on a new whole trajectory as the Serefair Conservatory, there is in fact a new like adventure. And so for me, a lot of it is this idea that, Travel Tuesday and Whole Wealth Wednesday can take on a new form, a new identity. And it's like, whether I rename it or whatnot, I don't even know if I'm not even obviously recording on the exact days. Like I'm actually recording this as kind of a makeup session for last week. And then this week I'm going to do another one. And then hopefully I can get back on track for 2 recordings a week. Because that really is like the bar that I've set for myself, that I want to do 2 hour-long recordings in a week because I have this time and the space for that, at least right now. And I feel like these are quite important to me because also it helps me to really get my ideas out and have somewhere that I can, even refer to them because it feels really good when they're not just sitting on my chest, right? When they're not just like scattered about in different notes and books and like even on my desktop, like my digital desktop or whatnot. It feels really good because sometimes it feels like it's all just contained within me. And now I can kind of like move that containment to another place. So it's not just all kind of like brewing within me. And then I think there is another refinement factor because in the previous video, I was talking about like this refinement stage, right? So it's like once all the raw data is collected, I can now take this and refine it even further. Like there is more to go with it. And what was it I wanted? The organization piece. So organization is a huge thing for me because, waking like right now, I've noticed that I've been waking up a lot. I've been wanting to leaning more to like, I tend to stay up later in general, like as more of a night owl. So, being up until like the wee hours of the night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. is something that occurs frequently. And then I've also noticed that there's been times where I started waking up earlier as well, right? So maybe like 4:30, 5 a.m. And it's this thing where obviously I can't just be staying up very, very late. It's like, am I a night owl or am I a morning early bird kind of thing? It's like, I can't really be both because you do have to sleep at some point. And I find like I'm not necessarily the type of person who likes napping. So like in the daytime, I'm not really someone who can just nap on command. Yes, if I'm like particularly exhausted or I really didn't get enough sleep, then I might just kind of find, what's the word thinking of like become more drowsy and just kind of doze off naturally a little bit. But by nature, it's like I'm not the kind of person that can be like, or am I? I don't know. But as of right now, I've never been someone who just nap during the day. Like I like to be kind of awake for the whole day. Um, but it's like the same. It's like I like staying up late, but I also enjoy waking up early and getting like a head start to the day, so as it were. So it's like, how do I choose? Which one is it? And now another thing I really wanted to mention is about your time and your energy being so crucial. Because obviously, when you are valuing your time at a very high level, you cannot allow things that kind of deter you from that focus. That, if you're spending too much time thinking about something, or you're spending too much time like on particular tasks that just don't matter, or simply, you know, someone makes you feel bad, right? Or someone does something that kind of like your emotions start to be like, what the heck? And then you almost feel like you have to unravel that. So like there's some things you can just nip in the bud. And then there's other things like if it's taking too much of your power of attention or energy away from it, that's also something that is like a organizational. That's something to organize too, right? Your energy is something that you can organize. It's not just like the physical things. It's also your emotional energy, your spiritual direction, your spiritual focus, your psychology, essentially. So all of these factors really do play into it. And there was something else I wanted to talk about. Yes, organization. So when I was mentioning that like my Zoom files were already coming up to the storage limit, this is another thing. It's like I I kind of also delayed doing this containment session because usually it's an hour long, right? So it takes up a little bit more storage. And I knew I was coming up to the storage limit, so I didn't want to start recording and then be out of space or something, and that would just give me like just I don't know, I just don't like that energy. So I wanted to be sure that I was going to have enough space to record the session. So I was like, okay, I put it like a mental note and even wrote it down, and I was like, okay, I need to actually offload some of my storage so that there is space for this. And there's also things like I want to organize. I have so many different files on my Zoom recordings that are just from every which way or whatever, recordings, meetings, podcast, whatever it is, it's just all there, right? So I also, beyond just offloading it, like on the storage device, I just upload, like I didn't even do all of it. I think I just offloaded like a few handful of videos um, to an SSD device. And so at least it would free up space that I could go ahead and do this. But you see how that's kind of just like, it's that kind of incremental thing where it's like, I really want to do it from like a whole overhaul, right? Where it's like, okay, I need to just like have this whole systemized way of doing things and process where I'm not doing this in a very like piecemeal way, like a bite-sized thing. It becomes like this, you know, maybe every month I go and do a whole, and it's not just like I'm just doing one thing, right? Sometimes, yeah, it's good that you can get in the focus of like just taking the action, right? So if something needs to be done, you just go and do it right then and there. You're not like, I gotta wait for this particular day or time for me to do this. Sometimes there's something to be said about just acting in the moment, about just doing things quickly, but just doing, even if you just have to do a one-off task, it's like, okay, just do it. If you can just do it now and it doesn't take much effort or whatever, and then it kind of gets you going for the next thing. Like I wouldn't be like, okay, this isn't the end of the month schedule. But the main point of that is that if you have these systems in place, then you're less likely to come up to these moments where it's like you got to do these one-off things, right? Because when you have to like suddenly it's like, okay, I can't now go on with the Zoom recording because I might go over the storage limit. And so I have to do this first. And then that becomes a bit of an impediment. And not only that, it might become a little bit of that friction where you're like, okay, well, I got to do this one-off thing, which you can very well just do, right? I just kind of did that so that I wouldn't have to like do this whole overhaul. Because then at that point, it's like, when am I actually going to do that, right? When is this video going to actually be just start? So the whole thing is like, I don't do a lot of production into this video. Obviously, at some point, probably I would start dressing up more. I would start being more intentional with them or something. At this beginning stage, I guess I could call it, I don't even call it beginning, but it's kind of like, it's about, for me, it's like the path of least resistance all the time. It's like if I just want to start something, I'm just going to get started. Because the whole point to me is like getting the message out. It's like using my voice and speaking up and also the containment practice, right? So not just say, I think very specifically to me, it's like on YouTube because there's a video factor and the audio factor. So it's like I could just very well record a voice note or write like a note in like typing it or writing it by hand, or there's so many other ways to like do the containment practice. But for me, the YouTube exercise is particularly of the standard that I want because it has both the video and the audio component. And so this is what in a way stretches me because it feels a little bit more like there has to be a little bit more, not even effort, because obviously right now I'm just in bed and I'm just like in my bathrobe still. I've, not really even gotten up per se. So it's not really per se the effort, but there is like I mentioned, like obviously having clear space for my Zoom storage to record this video, and it's an hour long. So I'm setting like this, a voice note. It doesn't really have to be an hour long. When you're writing in a journal, I don't really set a time. I just maybe just jotting notes. So it's not the same thing. When I'm setting like an hour frame for this container, and I'm like, I'm going to turn the video on, and obviously I'm just speaking here. Haven't necessarily prepared anything per se, but there's a certain like when I think I talked about this in the previous video about there's like a certain energy because it takes energy to do this. Like I might just be lying down right now. I may be laying down and I'm not actually like I didn't prepare anything for this, but there's energy that has to go into it because like my mind has to be thinking and my mind has to be like on right now to fill the space with an hour's worth of like diet, like monologue essentially. I'm just talking to myself here, but there has to be like a certain excavation of like what's actually going on in your mind, like this idea of like actually going with, because a lot of times I think that okay, I feel like I'm just kind of rehashing stuff that I said in last video. This is where like sometimes just keeping that momentum is very, very important because I missed last week. So it feels like almost having to do a catch up, like a review. Like, what did I talk about again a couple weeks ago? It's almost like a certain flow and a momentum is kind of like there's a certain start and stop energy. Whether you just continue it every week, and I was doing the twice a week at first, right? I feel like there's much more massive momentum that is gained from doing a certain regular practice. And it's not even about like the being so regimented or like the consistenciness of it, or whatever. You know what I'm trying to say? It's not even about like being so consistent or like the discipline. It really is about that momentum that you build up because at some point you stop having to think about it very intentionally, not even intentionally. Like obviously there's still more intentionality I want to bring that to this. What I'm trying to get at is that there's the flow, kind of like when the flow is in place, there's a certain energy, there's a certain mechanism that you can like just kind of kicks into place with like, okay, Tuesdays is when I do my travel Tuesday masterclass. I'm still calling it masterclass, but in my mind now it's like the YouTube container. And then Whole Wealth Wednesday. So when I was like in that flow, which really started in December, I was just like, yeah, on Travel Tuesday, and then it's my Whole Wealth Wednesday, and I actually started with a very specific time, which was 1 p.m. my time, both days. And I would just like every time it was like I had an appointment. It was like I have to be at this appointment at this time, and then I would start that session. And I was actually getting like sitting upright, dressed, and whatever. So there's something said to be said for that. That being said, I feel like I do like how I've kind of allowed it. I also started this thinking like I was doing like a trying to invite other people to join and like actually trying to teach something or whatnot. And then it kind of just evolved on its own where it's like, yeah, no, it's not really so much of that. It's just for me to kind of to contain my ideas first. And then I also realized instead of trying to present something and being like, okay, I'm talking about this, and then I kind of started more with like me talking about like my past and my experiences and how I came on my whole journey and then how I got here and then Serefair and all that and trying to teach a little still like whatever it is. And that's why, entitling these videos Travel Tuesday and Whole Wealth Wednesday. And then that also felt a little bit contrived in a sense. And I also mentioned like there's a certain like energy that was just like, when you talk about things that have already happened, a lot of times you feel like you're trying to almost like give a justification for like, okay, why are you even talking right now? What are you sharing right now? Who are you? La la la. You want to be like, who are you? La la la. Tell me about your past, your history, your background. And it feels like you're like this is not the world that I belong to, right? I don't like feeling like you're being interviewed for something or like you're into so it just feels like a little bit contrived. And there's a little bit of that like energy of like, what are you trying to like what is the point of this right now? So now it feels a lot more natural in a sense because I'm just syncing up with like whatever's present for me now. And if I reference like experience that I've had or certain, insights, and also in fact, a lot of my wisdom and experiences and the insights I have now are because of my experiences and who I've become. And I don't necessarily feel like I have to, it's like not even like about having to rehash and explain and go over like, oh, that's what I did, and that's my experience, blah, 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 blah. Like this exposition, like an expose, right, on like all of this stuff, because that's simply not where the energy is. And so there's a certain flow. It's almost like when a river is just like going along, you kind of just have to go along with it. Whatever you happen to enter the river, you can't be like, oh, there's still that like over back 200 meters there, and I need to go and uh it's like you can't go against the stream and you got to just start. That's the thing. It's like time is an ever-flowing stream. It's like whatever you didn't feel like you didn't do yesterday or the day before or last year or 10 years ago, whatever, that you didn't share your story as it was in the moment. So that's a big thing for me, right? It's like I have this whole story and this whole journey that I lived that's like within me, but I didn't necessarily like share it. I didn't necessarily like speak about it. I didn't necessarily like create content around it. I didn't necessarily like coach on it or even create like educational trainings and whatever you want to call it, or I didn't do these containment things. So now it feels like, gosh, I have this whole decade of experience and wisdom. How do I actually get that across? It's like, you can't do that. You can't do that in reverse. You can't be like, I'm going to try to show it now. It's like you didn't do it in the moment and you just didn't do it. And that's something you just have to allow to be. And actually, everything is perfect in this moment. You just have to actually get out of your head sometimes, like let go of that story in your mind, like, gosh, I didn't do all these things. And that could be well true. It's like, yeah, if you had just done it earlier, yeah, sure, there's a lot of value you could have provided. There's a lot of things that you could have actually shared. And you would actually have a whole lot, like a freaking bank of like resources that you've already created from the moment in time. Like, let's just, every moment is so precious. It's like you cannot be the same person that you were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, right? That's why there's something so beautiful about recording yourself recording yourself or just whatever, recording the moment in the moment because that's exactly what it is. You're recording in the moment. When you're in the moment, you cannot recreate. Like ever, it just made me think of those recreation videos or pictures that people sometimes do, right? Where they take a photo of themselves as younger or whatever, and then they recreate it when they're older. It's like, great, it's a recreation, but it's not the thing itself, right? So that's where this is just becoming, well, probably everything that I do is more about philosophy. I'm a very philosophical person. Like that's my whole like it's like metaphysical, spiritual. I just think if I like have a category for these YouTube videos, they're a lot more leaning towards like the spiritual, the metaphysical, the philosophical of life, and obviously bring that to like the practicalities in the everyday and like how to live life more excellently. In fact, the Serefair Conservatory podcast episodes, which you can go listen to, which I'm going to be recording an episode today and uploading that for Tuesday and Wednesday. And also actually, in fact, with my podcast episodes, I feel like there's certain like structure that could be implemented for that, which I feel like sometimes I don't quite know per se, because right now I've been doing like Tuesday I record it and then I upload it as well. And then Wednesday I record and then I upload as well. But it's like, could I do that more efficiently? And like, is efficiency even like the point of it all? But there is something to be said that like do I just record it and film it in it, like not film it, record it and upload it in advance so that I'm not like, okay, Tuesday, gotta do this. And then, you log into your account and then you do the recording and then you upload it, right? It's almost like that assembly line where you can get so efficient where everything just becomes like this assembly line where you just like bulk do these tasks and then you do these tasks in bulk. And while I understand that notion and that principle, sometimes that feels very like it just gets kind of um what's the word I'm trying to think of? It's like kind of it just becomes like not even dehumanize a task, but like the task itself almost just becomes like this function. Like it just becomes something that you just automate and you just like, okay, I'm just whipping it out kind of thing. Like I'm just knocking it out and just getting it done in bulk and then scheduling like days in advance. Now I don't want it to feel like a production factory. So that's another thing. It's like when I record the podcast, a lot of times I'm actually quite excited to. I'm like, oh yes, today's podcast. Well, actually, that's not true. I'm not always excited to do it. A lot of times I'm like, as I do it, I'm actually excited. So once I get started on it, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. What's today's episode going to be about? And like, woo! And then I get to like talk about it and share it. And then that's another uh that's another I don't know what do you call it. I can add it to my library of my podcast. It's another collection to add, another piece to add to the collection. Words, anyways. Oh, what was I trying to say? Yeah, so I actually get very excited when I'm actually doing it. I'm like, woohoo, I love doing this. And so this is the thing where as I'm actually doing it, I'm like so happy that I'm doing it. And when I look back at the collection that I've created and that I have, right, for the Serefair Conservatory podcast, that actually started out as Let the Story Write Itself podcast. Actually, it's still titled that, but it kind of evolved into the Serefair Conservatory, and the style and the format also shifted. Like it started in February of 2020, five. And then now it's like almost 1 year. It's almost like it's already February. So it's like pretty much 1 year now, and I'm still going. And yet, like the format has a little bit evolved and the title of it has evolved. I changed the logo, like the little picture thing. And, just like there's been just kind of like little tweaks and things over time. And it's like there's a certain rhythm now, right? Where it's like I kind of it's taking on its own identity more and more. It's like it's become more clear what it's all about. And that's the whole point. It's like we started it. It's like obviously I have a message, I have a story I want to share. And yet I don't, it's like not fully formed yet. It's kind of still coming into formation. And then after a while, this kind of starts to crystallize itself. Like it starts to kind of make itself more known to you. So that's where Let the Story Write Itself is in fact letting the story write itself. It's like such a meta thing, right? It's like the podcast entitled Let the Story Write Itself is in fact along the way writing itself because I don't necessarily know what it's all going to become or have a plan for it per se. I just allow it to unfold and to show me what's coming through. And this is the other thing with like the podcast. When I'm like just looking at it like, oh, today I have to record my podcast. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a sense of like, oh, gosh, that's just one more thing I got to do today. But that's like the mindset shift, it's not even a mindset shift, but like a lot of times certain things that you feel like, oh gosh, I have to do that. Things can either feel like a drudgery and like a heavy or like, oh gosh, I have to do this versus, if there's a certain orientation, if there's a certain outlook to it, if there's a certain way of like, gosh, so like things can very easily just be relegated to like another task to do, another thing to batch and to schedule out. Or there can be a lot of infusion of like, wow, I'm so excited to do this. And seeing like keeping connected to the bigger picture and like the overall purpose is like, wow, I'm so excited by the Serefair Conservatory. And I'm so excited by this body of work that I'm creating and this collection that is being like built over time. And so when you think of it in like these broader terms, and also just like this notion of adventure, of like this evolution, this constant journey of like letting the story write itself. So there's a whole like feeling of possibility and adventure and wonder baked into it. And so when I connect to all of that and I really, it's like, why do I even have it on my calendar in the first place? There was something that, inspired me, that kind of led me to be like, I feel like I want to start a podcast because that was my desire, right? No one said start a podcast. I wanted to do that. So it's really like, why did I want to, like, I am the one who put on the calendar. And yet sometimes I look at it, I'm like, oh, another task to do today. Maybe I should just batch it. Maybe I should try to knock this out quickly so that efficiently as possible so that it takes up as less space as it can during the day. But there's also like, it's like that conundrum, right? It was like, okay, if you, there's something that you love to do, that you've assigned to yourself to do, that you want it to do, but then at some point it becomes like a drudgery or like a feeling of, oh, I have to do this. You know what I mean? As like, well, you know, when I say you have to do it, you don't have to do it. But then when you don't feel it, you feel bad about not doing it. It's really not bad about doing that. But like when I miss a week, like even just with these YouTube containment videos, I, when I missed last week, I was like, oh, well, and then I was talking about even the week prior when I was like abroad in London, I was like in England and such. I was like, I didn't even, I could have done it. And it's like, that's a week that I can never get back, right? In the sense of like, I can't go back and film that again because I just didn't do it in the moment. And when you don't do it in the moment, oh, this, anyways, when you don't do something in the moment, you can't go back and get that moment back. And that's the ephemeral, the ethereal quality of life, right? Where every moment is, in a way, it's like, I would say it's a gift, yes. It's a gift, but also every moment is like, you can't, like, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's like you can't um, contain the flow of time. Yes, this is what I'm trying to get at. Okay, so I'm containing this through this YouTube video, right? In this 1 hour container of time that I'm recording this, and I'm just allowing the words to flow and whatever's on my mind to come through. And it's like a free flow, right? Within this 1 hour container of time, it's like, can you imagine like a stream, like a river flowing through? I'm just like, I'm a very visual thinker. So like in my mind's eye, I'm just visualizing it. You have a camcorder on, and then you've got like maybe you're filming like a river stream. And yes, you are in fact capturing this moment. I guess, and it might just look like, okay, there's just a river and there's a water going by, whatever. And on the surface, like, just like you wouldn't just sit there and watch it. I mean, maybe you would, I don't know. But usually most people are like waiting for some kind of action, right? They're like, okay, what's happening? There's nothing. You're just watching a river because it looks largely the same. It doesn't look like anything's happening per se. But like in fact, every single moment is not the same because of the water. You cannot stop the water from flowing on by. It just keeps going. You can't really like unless you dam it up or something or like create a container and like really harness that water. It's like that water is just and that's kind of like time. What am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that like, okay, so while you can capture moments, while you can contain it, how can you actually capture the time itself? Because that's the one thing that you cannot contain. You cannot contain time. And so in every moment, it's like if you don't capture it in that moment, you can't go back and be like, okay, I'm going to make up for this. Yes, I'm doing this makeup session. And okay, fine, that's fine. But truly and really and truly, you're not going to get exactly what maybe would have come through, say, last week, or if I had done this yesterday, or, the week that I was in England, or even like the 10 years of adventures and decade of solo travel that I mentioned that I can talk about I can't really just show you now, right? Because it's not the same moment. So it's like in this moment, I can go back in my mind, I can kind of talk about it, but it's not of the moment anymore. It's not in that moment. So that's where it's like you got to appreciate and value your time, not just in terms of your life force energy, but in terms of the gift that it is and the like the wisdom that can come through when you actually allow that moment in time to be appreciated while you're in it. And this takes deep presence. Like this takes a lot of presence to not only be in a moment, but also have the wherewithal to actually capture it. Because I think, a lot of times like you want to capture something, but you don't want it to detract from the present moment. Isn't this common thing that people talk about, oh, just be in the moment and don't take a picture of it, don't have to use your device and whatever. But there's a certain deep presence that if you do it well, if you do it in a way that actually adds value in a way, or that is intentional or has a very like you know for me their intention would totally be about capturing a certain, well, this is where also the intention for me may not be as strong as it seems, because a lot of this is still very much raw energy. I'm just containing, I'm just allowing the thoughts to free flow. Whereas, have you ever seen like those people who do like vlogs or yeah, vlogs in particular, and they capture like their life and then they obviously put it together. And it's not even like so much raw, because obviously most people don't want to watch just like totally raw stuff. They need to have a certain polish to it, right? There has to be a certain direction, a certain like storytelling element to it. So there has to be like a strong kind of like intentionality behind it for that certain, like a certain pull, if that makes sense. Because it can be quite difficult to like, you don't want to just be watching random stuff. Like anyone can upload random stuff, right? Kind of like what this video is. But you, for something to actually like draw you in, there has to be a certain like core point and focus and direction and intentionality. And I feel like that for me at least, things don't really come to crystallization until I kind of just do it a few times. Like I have to practice, like do the thing, like experiential learning, right? I can't just be told like, well, this is like how you think and do how this came about, if that makes sense. And then suddenly you just jump to the end result. It's like almost like you have to go through the process yourself. At least for me, it's like this experiential learning. So it's kind of like just recording the videos to begin with. And then maybe at some point it starts to unfold, and then the next idea comes, and then it turns this into something more, and then the intentionality starts to crystallize. So for me, it's like I would love to one day just be able to, record moments and be highly intentional and present as I'm doing so, while also being in the moment and capturing it in a way that is highly intentional and has that focus to it. As of yet, I don't feel like I'm there, right? Because if I were to just pick up and record something, I feel like I wouldn't even know what I was recording, like in many ways. I'll be like, what am I recording? So even though in the moment I'm like just living something and I'm appreciating it, there's a very different lens and like a very different way your mind has to work to actually pick up a camera and actually start filming that as well. Because it's almost like then you need to have like a storyline. And if you were to start speaking as well, there would have to be like some kind of a narration that would very succinctly, almost like that would actually communicate what exactly it is that you're trying to say. And sometimes a lot of communication, it really does come from having a very organized mind, from having that intentionality of like, I know what I'm all about and what I'm speaking about and what I share and why I'm sharing it, and this is what I do. And so when you're filming something, it's like you actually have that intention, right? Like even when I'm doing these videos, like, I don't have that high intention yet, because I don't necessarily have that core, like this is what this video is about and this is what I'm talking about. And then maybe it's only a 10-minute long video because I'm very clear on what I'm talking. But because it's more about like a catch-all, kind of like a containment type of thing, you can like it's almost like think of it as like a fishing net, where you're just kind of grabbing as much as you can before you sort it out. That's what this feels like right now. It's kind of like this catch-all. It's like a almost like a journaling session, except I'm just talking rather than like just simply writing it. And another thing that I think, what else I watched? Oh, I know what I'm talking about. Energy management. So, another thing I've noticed that I really want to be more, make it like a stricter boundary, kind of like enforcing, is that energy energy boundaries, but like also management, like not giving my energy to things that are not like the what's like, how do I say this? Yeah. See how this like interesting, because like sometimes in my head it makes sense, and then like converting it into words. This is part of the oh, pardon me. I'm so excited to, after this, I'm going to be making my cacao drink that I like to drink every morning, taking my vitamins and supplements. I just like, that's a little bit of like a morning thing that I love to do. It kind of does get me like, yay, I'm so excited to start the day and like just start with this, and then so I'm excited to do that. There's still 15 minutes left of this or so, 20 minutes. Let me just think what I'm trying to say here. Yeah, I'm probably going to do another containment video because this one is more like a makeup for last week. So I want to do another one for um this week kind of thing. Like I try to do one once a week just because I feel like there's always so much that wants to come through. Part of this is like this, when I was younger, not even that young, like university age, I used to always like draw this image of like a water faucet, like with water drops coming out. And it's like having like, if the water droplets are kind of just going into the sink, they're not really being contained anywhere. This comes back to the containment idea as well. But as if you put a bucket underneath, right? Suddenly it becomes so much more. When you have a bucket of water, this is like latent energy. What is that called? That's like potential energy. You know, this is something you can do something with. Whereas if you just allow all the droplets from the tap to just kind of go into the sink, it's like in a way it's like a loss, if that makes sense. Because it's like you haven't caught it. So that's what really this feels like. And for some reason I was really drawn to like draw that image like so many times in my childhood when I was like in university and or even just shortly after. And it was like this subconscious message coming to me. It's like contain your ideas, contain them. And I just never really kind of did that properly. Like I would always like have different sketchbooks and like journals and notepads, like actually prolifically think about it. And even on my laptop, right? It started getting really populated with all sorts of files and whatever. And I think containment is such a big one for me because I'm the kind of person that has it's like have so many ideas. Like ideas are always flowing to me, okay? I'm like, this is the thing. My thing is about containment, like how to contain it all. Not just contain it, but in a way that actually is organized so that it can be used to something, right? So not just like, oh my gosh, you have like, so many files and you have so many whatever, and then so what? You just like sort it into folders, but then so what? So it's like part of this like process of refinement. It's like so you've got all the raw material, and then what next? And then what next? And then what's next, right? So this has not necessarily quite clear, has not only been developed to that fruition per se, but pardon me. And I feel like there's many ideas that I kind of just simply am and I simply be. When I went on my world travel trip, like somehow I metabolized or like alchemized or transmuted like all of these subconscious ideas. And then suddenly it just kind of catapulted me into this worldwide adventure around the world, right? And all the journeys and like experiences and moments. I took the one-way train across Canada from Vancouver to Toronto, and then it led me to Spain, and then it led me to Morocco, and then it led me to Israel, and on, and hot air balloon in Cappadocia, Turkey, and on, right? And all these things that were not planned. It felt like a magic carpet ride. And a part of that was like a way of being that was like almost like all these downloads and ideas and like ideas, I just said that all of these like internal processes that were within me kind of like churning and metabolizing and alchemizing into suddenly becoming that person who went and did all those things, right? So how did I become the person who went off on the one-way train and like kind of swept up in that magic, allowed myself to believe in the magic and suddenly was living in the magic. And like that's the thing, is like it took a certain like that was like all of the ideas and like the intuitive downloads and then like the integrated parts of who I was becoming, who I became essentially. From all of those ideas that it was like I was getting these nudges, like contain them all, right? Like the droplets of water, contain it somehow, like create something. And then imagine if I turn like my sketchbooks, which a lot of my sketchbooks kind of like just recycle them or whatever. So a lot of times like I don't necessarily keep things either. So, and even like my photos management and stuff like that, it's like, and also I just a feeling of like I could have taken a lot more video, photos, everything, right? And as I'm doing it, also contain it. So upload it, share it. So this is part of like that factor where, you can go from one thing, so it's like doing something and just doing it, but then there's a whole other world that can be opened up, right? This is this field of possibility. This is where like if I also record it and then I also contain the ideas and then I refine it, right? So I have that process of that, turn the raw material into like the gold, so to speak, the diamond. And that suddenly becomes a whole different process. That also suddenly churns out a whole different product, a whole different thing. So it's not just you living your life and just being and integrating it all and oh wow, and suddenly you've experienced some transformation in your own life. That is also actually containing it so to become some of certain value, of a sort that can become of a new energetic quality and a new value that you can put into the world. Does this make sense? So this is the part that I had never really mastered in that sense because I would always have all these ideas and like all these nudges and prompts of like do this, do this, do that. And so while I was just living my life, I didn't necessarily do the containment part where it's like, okay, now you can also simultaneously be outputting the information, the value, churning out the value, like turning it, becoming like almost like a production factory of churning out value from the raw material. It's almost like you become a diamond factory. But instead of producing diamonds, like the physical, like literal diamonds that you can dig up from the soil and whatever the process is that turns that raw material into the diamond itself, it's like, gosh, I hope this is the sound is like on the laptop. Like I don't even know where the sound is recording from because you know really when you're just talking, you're not like have a mic. It's just like ambient sound or whatever. But I don't know because it's like I have my laptop just my oh, it just sat on me right now. Like I don't know if I'm actually covering up where the mic is. So I hope this is actually being recorded. So this is another aspect of like being more professional and actually doing things in a knowledgeable way, right? Because you might have all the wisdom in the world. You might have all the experiences, the lived experiences and gone on all the journeys and like had the unique perspective and everything, as we all do in many ways. Like we all have a certain thing that we can share with the world. It's like I went on this world around the world trip and everything, and it wasn't just a around the world trip. It was like who I became. It was like this so much that I could share in that transformation stage. And it's like now I just simply it's like you can't go back in time and share something that you just didn't share at the time, right? So then what if now I'm being called to that? It's like I'm going on a new journey. I'm being called to this containment still. And yet because it feels like I don't know what to do, right? How often do we not know what to do, so we just don't do it? But then when you look back at it, it's like, well, why can I figure out what to do? Why can't I have just started along the way and figured it out as I go along and almost like allow myself to not know, but still do the thing that I feel called to? Whatever that is, actually really giving it some thought or really actually making that decision like, okay, what is it that I would do right now if I were really trying to contain this or to share it in some way? So like what have like all those sketchbooks or like all these ideas or these things, like a lot of times I would just talk about them. And maybe, there's this idiom in Chinese stories and everything. It's like your music falling on deaf ears. So sometimes when you talk to the wrong people who don't actually appreciate what you're saying to them or like see the value in it or just kind of like it just falling on deaf ears, right? It's like it was like this story of a like this virtuoso like musician. He's like playing music and it's like this particular instrument in China. And it's like so beautiful. And most humans who appreciate music, they're like, wow, this is a master. And yet, so he was like playing out in a field one day playing for a cow, and the cow was just like kind of like idly like grazing the grass, and obviously just paid him no attention because it's a cow and whatever, I don't know. And then the musician playing was like getting frustrated and upset, like, "Oh, how are you not appreciating? You didn't even look over at me or pay attention to what you just continue like grazing on the grass." And it was like, so the whole like point of that idiom and this what this story illustrates, like it's actually a Chinese story, very well known. Chinese idioms are very well known. Uh, pretty much everyone will study it growing up in childhood. So when you like, it's like kind of like a phrase that people will say, and like people will just know. So it's like playing music for a cow or something, right? That's like an idiom or something, which really means like your particular gift falling on deaf ears because it's simply not appreciated with the wrong audience. So this is where containment also involves like using all faculties, like your intuition, your insight. It's like, I would always just talk to mostly it would just be my mother, essentially. Like I talk to her the most, but it's like in many ways it felt like she would just be like, yeah, yeah, okay, okay, la la la, listening to me and be like, wow, that's so good and la la la. But it wouldn't necessarily be taken to the next level. It wouldn't be like, wow, Sarah, you should really, I don't know. It's like, so for me, it's like I always felt like I want to write a book. I want to start a blog. I want to record like videos and everything. But I was putting all this information just kind of like yeah, I'm not trying to say like, oh, my mother wasn't like appreciating any of what I said. What I'm trying to say here is that um if you're kind of just it's like the water droplets, right? If you're just kind of like allowing the droplets to fall into anywhere, it's like you have to be more intentional about like, okay, is this actually serving the people who need to be served? Is this actually going to have the most value? You know, when you contain into a bucket, like, yeah, okay, you can go back into the sink and it's just getting recycled into the system, right? All the droplets, right? Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Great. There's nothing wrong with me sharing all my stories to my mother and everything. But if that was the only way that I had as an outlet or like a containment kind of thing, if I wasn't really doing anything for with a greater value of like, you know, becoming the production factory in a sense. It was like if I wasn't doing anything with a bigger scale or bigger idea in mind, or like even if I had the bigger idea and I just didn't see the pathway, it was like, okay, well then put it into like, you know, whether I was just putting it into notebooks, but then what's the next step? So maybe typing it up and then putting it into a blog form, right? And then maybe at some point that blog becomes a book. So it's like, do you see how like in hindsight now I'm like, well, but also there's a difference between just knowing and doing. Because I think you can think about these pathways, like, yeah, I could just put onto a blog. Do you actually do it? Because that's the thing. Because even when I'm doing like these videos and these this YouTube containment exercise that I'm doing, and even uploading like my podcast, you see how sometimes I'm not, you know, I've missed a week here, I've missed a week there. I'm like, um, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, you know, in my mind, I'm like, oh gosh, you know, that's like an hour of the day, and then whatever, I'm just monologuing to a camera. But at the same time, you know, sometimes we tend to spend more time thinking about it than actually the task itself actually takes. So, like in the time that you could have been just going ahead and pressing record and just doing your YouTube containment, whatever, or recording your podcast, sometimes you're just thinking about like, well, really, I should be doing this instead or this, and this is really where sometimes we don't actually do the thing that would actually get us there. Because all those times that I was always like sketching or writing in my notebook or whatever, and had all the time in the world and could very well just start filming things and not for lack of equipment or resources. It really has to do with a lack of intentionality. Whereas if I'm like, yes, I'm going to contain this, and then I would find any which way to actually do that. So whether it was like, okay, so all the things that I'm sharing with my mother, what if I had just pressed record on like a device and allowed that to record as I was sharing with her? That would have been like this. Can you see now how suddenly it just elevated it? Because it's not about like recording it, it's about containment. So, like, as I'm in the moment talking with my mother and sharing with her, and like, yes, I'm so excited, and like, I love talking about these things. And, but then there's also another added component. It's like I'm containing it so that these raw ideas are wanting to become something else. And obviously, as I'm talking to her, it's not necessarily like just to shoot the wind or shoot the breeze or whatever. There's like something within me that wants to be expressed. And while she's like, you know, very graciously like listening to me, and like sometimes I should like she'd be doing chores in the kitchen, I should be like talking and stuff like that, right? So that was kind of like the dynamic a lot of times, or like, you know, we'd be driving somewhere, I'd just be in the car chatting away while she's like driving us somewhere. So it's like, you know, there were different factors. It wasn't really just like we were just sat there across a table and like just literally that would just be a monologue essentially. But usually we have a dialogue. So yeah, usually the monologue happened when she was like doing something and I would just be talking. And so it's like, what if at that time I was also just recording? That would be so amazing. I'm like, what was I actually saying at that time when I was 22, when I was 20, when I was 19, right? All these different things and stages of my life and all the different ideas. What a gift, like how precious, right? Every single moment. If you just think of yourself right now, it's like you are one in a billion. You are just like a one of one. Like there is no one like you. It's like all of your thoughts and your experiences and like your lifetime, like who you are in this lifetime will never ever happen again, right? And it's like how amazing to actually capture all of that because of how precious and like, you know, are you ever like when you first see something from like 10 years ago or even just like a week ago or something that you captured or filmed and like because every moment quickly becomes like a memory, right? Every moment, like even right now, every single moment quickly becomes something that is already in the past. So when I don't know, I always think it's like so magical because every time like so okay, so say I complete this video, the hour is up, it's like the container is closed. I then press end record. I go and upload it. And it's now like this, it's now like this artifact. It becomes like an artifact essentially. And then when you look back at that, you're like, oh my goodness, wow, that was like so long. It's not even so long ago, but do you ever look back at yourself? Aw, you're so cute there. You're so young. What the heck? Like it feels like you're like looking at yourself from like a meta quality. Imagine if you just like in every moment you were so like present and appreciative to the moment of how like how much more appreciative you can be because that's what this is really all about. Not just containing the moment, but taking its value to the next level. And not only taking its value to the next level, but allowing that to become like a dedicated practice, something that you actually do like over and over and over again. Yes, hence practice. So, um, oh, I feel like there were just so many things that came to my mind as that, but that is the thing. I feel like in the containment of this, if I were to like go back and listen to myself and rewatch, like those same ideas that it spurred would kind of come back to me because like I felt like there was so many things just kind of burst forth. I'm like, wow, there's so many things like that I actually want to talk about now. And I'm just like realizing there's only 2 minutes left in this video for the 1 hour to be up. And I'm like, every time there's always like more ideas spurred on, right? So this is like an endless, like ongoing thing. And so this is really where it's like, as you organize your day, and even I'm talking about like myself for, just starting my day, and now it's like about 8 a.m. and I'm really just about to start my day. And it feels like where are all the nooks and crannies and like the the parts of your life where you're not truly living like in that moment, like that true appreciation of the moment, right? Are you truly containing it in the way that it deserves to be contained, right? Because every time you contain something, you take it into another moment. If you this is something that I have to save for like maybe in tomorrow's video or yeah, because I'm gonna do a video for this week. So this is perfect, but and this is yeah, I'm gonna end off here for now because I feel like it just sparked a whole new tangent of things I wanted to talk about. But it's also about like how you go about your day. And even like, ever like in the morning, I always feel like I'm so like I know exactly how I would go about my day, or I know exactly what it is like that I want to tweak so I value my more time more during the day. And then somehow like it's like containing that piece right then and there and turning that into the next piece without having to like, oh, I need to have the fully formed vision and have it all perfect laid out and like have the whole master plan in place. And just like, in this moment, I'm getting this intuitive nudge and this is what it's telling me. And this is the next piece that's falling into place. And now I'm going to implement that. And then as you implement that piece, the next piece shows up, right? And then until at some point you have the whole master plan and the whole masterpiece in place. But it really starts with having that one piece that you contain and you take it to the next level, right? It's that anchoring and then implement, and then now you have that solid ground that you can then build upon. Wow, okay. There is so much to go from this, but it's now 8 a.m. in my where I am, and the hour is up, and I'm going to end this video here, and then I will see you in the next one.